Johnny Manziel was expected to be an NFL legend. How did this guy go from being a college star to one of the biggest busts in NFL history? Manziel was already a superstar in high school, getting the nickname Johnny Football. Every college wanted him, and he eventually accepted a scholarship from Texas A&M. Johnny had the ability to make big plays, and that's exactly what Texas A&M needed. The thing is, he didn't get national attention until a game in 2012 against Arkansas. Johnny Manziel had 557 yards on offense, breaking the previous record which lasted for 50 years. Later in the season, he broke his own record, getting 576 yards. That should be impossible. Manziel was the first player in SEC history to have two 500-yard games in one season, and now he was on the radar of every NFL team. Now comes the game. The game that made Johnny Manziel a player every franchise would want. He was playing against Alabama. Nobody thought they even had a chance. But what did he do? He shocked the world. With 345 yards and 2 touchdowns, Johnny Manziel shook the world and beat the #1 Alabama, 29-24. Anybody who wasn't a believer in Manziel was now a believer. But Manziel wanted more. He wanted the Heisman Trophy. And to earn that, he needed to do one more thing. Break the SEC record for most yards in a single season. And Johnny Manziel did exactly that, finishing the season with 4,600 yards, destroying the old record. Oh, did I forget to mention? Johnny Manziel did all of this as a freshman. This record showed that Johnny was one of the best college quarterbacks in a long time and made people excited for his NFL future. In 2012, he won SEC Freshman of the Year, along with the Davey O'Brien Award for the country's best quarterback, and most importantly, the Heisman Trophy. It was the first time in college history a freshman won both the Heisman and the O'Brien trophies. Winning these awards proved that Johnny had the potential to be an NFL great. Johnny played one more year in college. So what happened? Was the first year a fluke? No. In his second year, he broke his own record, finishing the season with 4,900 yards. Right now, Johnny Manziel is on top of the world, but he has a decision to make. Does he play one more year in college, or does he enter the NFL draft? Everyone, and I mean everyone, expected him to stay in college. He was breaking his own records every season. All he had to do was play one more year, keep breaking his records, and he would be the obvious #1 pick. But Johnny Football once again shocked the world and announced he was entering the NFL draft. And now we enter the NFL career of Johnny Manziel. Based on his stats, he was an obvious top 5 pick. But NFL teams had one problem with Manziel. Or should I say, they had a problem with Johnny Football, because that's what people called his personality. Johnny Manziel was the great football player, but Johnny Football was his wild persona, partying all the time, doing things he probably shouldn't be doing. Johnny was a very flashy player. After a big play, he would raise his arms and rub his fingers together. That was his signature money sign that he was giving the crowd. The money sign got fans excited, got his opponents angry, but most importantly, it made NFL teams doubt him. One NFL coach even said, "I think he is an arrogant little bleep." And he wasn't the only coach with that opinion. Scouting reports across the NFL were wildly different. Some scouts said he's a once-in-a-lifetime talent, while other scouts said he's undraftable. The NFL was torn on Johnny Manziel. Was his talent worth all the problems that came with him? That was the big question. Now we move to draft day, the 2014 NFL draft. and people have no idea where Johnny Manziel's gonna go. He might go number 1, he might go 5, he might go 15, but nobody could have predicted what actually happened. Johnny Manziel looks up at the big board and sees player after player being drafted that wasn't him. And in Johnny football fashion, he did something truly wild. Johnny Manziel sent a text to the Cleveland Browns coach saying he wanted to wreck the league in Cleveland. The Browns weren't planning to draft Johnny Manziel. They didn't even have a pick until much later in the draft. But the coach was so impressed by Johnny's confidence that the Cleveland Browns traded up to the 22nd overall pick and drafted Johnny Manziel. Cleveland fans went nuts. Even the Cleveland draft team went nuts. For the first time in a long time, there was hope in Cleveland. Now, as an NFL pro, the big question was, will we see Johnny Manziel, the elite player, or Johnny Football, the wild personality? Now we enter the regular season, the time to find out the truth about Johnny. But there's a twist. Johnny Manziel already messed things up before the regular season. He played so bad in the 4 preseason games that the Browns named Brian Hoyer the starter for week 1 instead of Manziel. An absolute shock to everyone. Brian Hoyer was not a good quarterback, so him starting was a really bad sign. Now with Brian Hoyer doing Brian Hoyer things like playing terrible, the Browns got desperate and needed to make a change. And here it comes, Johnny Manziel's NFL debut. It's week 15 against the Bengals. Even though it was a road game, the stadium was packed with Browns fans ready to see Manziel's first start. And the Bengals defense was struggling, so this was the perfect opportunity for Manziel. And what happened? The unimaginable. Johnny Manziel had one of the worst debuts in NFL history. He had 80 passing yards. 80! And he threw 2 interceptions. His passer rating was 27.3. The Browns lost to the Bengals 30-0. This was the literal definition of a disaster. Johnny Manziel's wild play style worked amazing in college, but so far in the NFL, it was flopping. But the Browns decided to give Johnny Manziel a second chance. The next game was against the Carolina Panthers, an even worse defense than the Bengals. This was his chance to redeem himself and show the world he could play NFL football. And what happened? In his second start, not only did Johnny have a horrible game, throwing 3 for 8 and only 32 yards, but Johnny got injured and was out for the rest of the season. Could the Cleveland Browns get any unluckier? And the crazy thing is, you would think people would feel bad because he got hurt, but his own teammates said this. One of the Browns players was quoted saying Johnny's season was 100% a joke. This is insane considering it was an injury that ended his season. But maybe the Browns players knew something that the rest of us didn't. Because who would know Johnny better than his own teammates? They probably saw some crazy stuff in the locker room that we didn't see. And while the Browns players were pretty harsh, the Cleveland fans were even harsher. They were already calling Manziel the biggest bust in Cleveland Browns history. Now comes 2015. Browns fans are hoping and praying for better things from Johnny Manziel. He's only played 2 regular season games, so maybe he just needs another chance. And he got that chance. It was week 1 against the Jets. Johnny was on the bench, but the starter, Josh McCown, got hurt. And this was Johnny Manziel's third chance. He starts the game with a touchdown to Travis Benjamin, his first NFL TD. And it was a beauty, an amazing play to get out of the pocket, and he threw a 50-yard rocket. This is the Johnny Manziel we were looking for. The Johnny Manziel the fans were waiting for. But then it all goes upside down. In the second half, Johnny Manziel turned the ball over 3 times, losing 31-10 to the Jets. So Manziel went back to the bench. But in a crazy turn of events, Josh McCown got hurt again. It's like the football gods were forcing the Browns to play Johnny Manziel and give him more chances. And this is where things get really interesting. It was week 10 against the Steelers, and Manziel had a great game. The Steelers were one of the toughest defenses in the league, and Manziel threw for 372 yards, his first 300-yard game in his career. The Browns still lost, but it didn't matter. The fans got to see Johnny's potential, and now they had hope. The biggest part, Johnny Manziel was named the starter for the rest of the season. But this is where Johnny football returns. The wild part of Johnny Manziel. During the team's bye week, videos came out of Johnny Manziel partying in Texas and partying hard on a bye week. Now, the Browns demoted Manziel from the starter all the way to the 3rd string. He was the backup's backup. But the football gods intervene again because Josh McCown, who we might as well call Josh McHurt, got injured again. And the 2nd string, Austin Davis, was playing awful. So awful that the Browns had to give another chance to their 3rd string quarterback, Johnny Manziel. But who was going to show up this time? Johnny Manziel or the other guy? It was Johnny Football. He played one good game and then he had a concussion, so he missed the final game of the season. But it wasn't the concussion that was the problem. It's what he did while he had a concussion. Manziel took a trip to Las Vegas, which is always a great idea when you have partying problems and a concussion, and he had to come back in time for Cleveland's last game of the season. Even though he wasn't starting, he had to be there to support the team. He partied too hard in Vegas that he missed his flight. We're just witnessing how Johnny Manziel is ruining every opportunity he gets. But even this isn't what ended his career. Now we move on to the last straw. In the 2015 offseason, Johnny Manziel was investigated for a domestic violence case with his ex-girlfriend. He was officially released by the Browns on March 11th, 2016, and has never played an NFL game again.